Draft fans, things are heating up now with only a couple of weeks to go. There's so many variables going on out there. There's videos with different draft orders, different power rankings, different scenarios, including trade and bids and all kinds of stuff. And it can sometimes be hard to keep up with. But we're going to try and do a bit of an all-in-one video today, which is only possible due to just how good the Tigercast community is. So to give some context here, last night on the live show with Shannon, we were talking about all things draft, and we actually had Soderem AFL drop in, who, for those who don't know, has got an AFL draft simulator program that he's made. And it runs, you can pretty much run all the outcomes and pick your plays and do your trades and things like that. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so we were chatting about that. And then this morning I wake up and I had an inbox message from one of our regular listeners. I won't say his name just yet because I'm not sure if he's comfortable with me doing that. I'll double check and revert back to that piece if he's happy for me to do so. But a message saying, "G'day Michaels, I've just put together a draft simulator, just like a basic one. If you're happy to have a look at it on the back of what you were talking about last night." I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's check it out." And it's unbelievable how clever people are to put together these types of programs as programmers, but I dare say it's easy work for them in what they do day to day. But so the long story short is we've got our very own Richmond themed AFL draft simulator that we can have a crack at and drop in a few different scenarios and see how things play out. Now, to this person's own comments, it's not maybe at 100% capacity with how it runs, but I would say it's close to 90 to 95% functional. So I've been making some tweaks during the day to try and replicate it to be as relative as possible. The only thing I'm not sure it's doing correctly at the moment that I noticed just before is when you place a bid for a player, I think it's taken from the highest pick first rather than from the lowest pick first. So that does probably play a little bit of a bearing on how things pan out. And it doesn't add in the other picks, but for a quick look to see how different scenarios play out, it's bloody awesome. And I can't thank this person enough for putting this together. So we'll jump across to it. But make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for more Tiger content. We're almost heading towards 4,100. We'll try and get there by draft night. But yeah, we'll jump across now to the simulator and we'll play through a few different scenarios. All right, here we go. Here is the simulator, AFL Draft Simulator, Richmond Tigers theme. You've got to love it, which is very, very good. So to run through it very quickly, so you've obviously got your clubs on the left. This is the draft order. You've got the points associated with each pick. And then quite simply in the player selection, you just click a drop down and there are the players. Now, this has just got the top 50 players. I'm not sure. It would have been based on one of the most recent lists that come out because that was just obviously the quickest and easiest way to put it together. And certainly when we're talking about Richmond's picks, it's the most relevant because we're kind of working in that, typically the top 3 or 4, but then we've got our pick 38 as well. So once players are selected, they'll strike off here on this list. And you can actually, I won't do it, but you can actually click on each of these names. It will go straight to their Rookie Me draft profile as well. It's unbelievable. You've got a bid scenario as well. So I'll show you just quickly what it will do. So if we were to put a bid in for Zeke Ewell, it'll come up and just show what the bid cost is, the total available points. So the bid cost takes into account the 10% discount, of course, and what it would. So that's all the picks available. If they were to match the bid, I know they're not going to bid at number 1, but as an example, then it ledgers it down the bottom here saying that Gold Coast matched, and they use, this is where I mean how the picks I think are coming through in reverse order, which we'll try and tweak. So it's got pick 52, 36, 29, 28, 24, and 18. But I'd like it to go the other way. I'd like it to go from, I think we needed to go from the lowest pick to the highest pick because it does change a few things with points left over and stuff like that. But that's just the basics of how it works. Like I said, bloody impressive to be chucked together quite literally overnight. It was, in my messages and email. Super impressive, and I can't thank this person enough. It's a really, really fun and cool tool to be able to play around with just to see how it plays out. But with that said, let's run through a few different scenarios to see what type of players we might end up with, including even the player that we might have at pick 38. But I've got a trade scenario that I want to play out too, like we had done on a previous video. But I guess the first thing we'll do, West Coast, we think it's going to be William Dersma, so we'll lock in William Dersma at pick number 1. Now, pick number 2, what's interesting is, are Gold Coast assuming the picks or the bids will come later, or do they think they're going to come around these 2 picks? I think they should come at these picks. I think it'd be pretty negligent of both West Coast and Richmond to not bid early, only if they're obviously happy to take the player, of course. So I think for the purpose of the exercise, we're going to go Zeke Uland at pick number 2, and Gold Coast will, of course, match that bid. So as you can see, once we scroll down, that has taken out the Gold Coast picks, and then you can see it's even shuffled our pick up from 38 to 34 because the picks beforehand have disappeared. And that's where if the order was flipped, that might be one less spot that it's come down to, but it's very, very close, very, very close. So that's the first matched academy bid. West Coast then at pick 3. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, doesn't it? Because there's arguments for Cooper Duff Tyler, and we can run it both ways and see how it looks, to be honest. But there's arguments for Cooper Duff Tyler, there's arguments for Sullivan Roby, arguments for Dyson Sharp. Yeah, you can take your pick, really. But for the purpose of this first run through, let's go with Cooper Duff Tyler as their pick for pick number 3. Then it comes to us at pick 4. This is where I would assume that we would bid on Dylan Patterson. I'd be sort of deeply disappointed if we didn't. So that would be one that Gold Coast will be able to match. Now, the deficit is the other part of the factor as well that's not fully built in, but it is to an extent. So the max deficit you can go into is 1,167 points for next year, but that's on the basis that you've got your round 1, 2, and 3 pick available, which Gold Coast don't. So they've only got 2 seconds and 2 thirds, so they can only go into deficit by, I think it's 300, or was it 600 and something points, which they would still be able to cover anyway just. But if West Coast were to bid at pick 2, it might 2 and 3 instead of 3 and 4 for us. It might make things a little bit more interesting, but they've got some wriggle room as well by making some trades, which we can talk about after. But for the purpose of this exercise, I would say we will bid on Dylan Patterson at 2. Some people even speculated they may not match this bid. They may want someone else, which would be quite remarkable, but I'll take it because he would be a huge need for us. But I think we'll say that he gets matched in this scenario. So you can see that it's added him down there to Gold Coast, and then West Coast have got the 2 selections for them. So that puts us back on the clock at pick number 5. I think here it has to be, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's Sullivan Roby in at pick number 5. And pick number 6, I've chopped and changed on this quite a bit for this particular run-through. But I do think I'm liking the thought of having Sully Roby and Dyson Sharp as a 1-2 combination. I'm thinking about the midfield of the future, having those two along with Houghton, Lawler, Smiley playing off half forward in the midfield, rotating in and out. I think it's adds some really good depth to both parts of the ground. But you could quite easily, if you wanted to change that to, Grill or Xavier Taylor for different purposes, obviously there to do so. But that's who I think we will go with there. We get to pick 7 and 8 for Essendon. I would say that they would be going after Sam Cumming, would be my first guess for the Bombers. And there's always been a lot of noise about Xavier Taylor as well. But what I don't know as to where this might fit in is a bid for Dan Annable. I kind of feel like it might come in here at around the 8 mark. Could definitely be proven wrong and it could come later. But let's chuck an Annable bid in here for the Brisbane Lions. So the bid cost 1,299 points. So they've got more than enough points to cover this anyway, so they're okay. They match the bid and they get Dan Annable. But what I want to look at here is by doing that, does it have an impact on our pick further down the line? So it's moved down another spot to 33. So this is what we were talking about when saying that the pick 38 won't be as bad as what it seems when all of these picks get absorbed and it all plays out. So back to Essendon's second pick. I think they'll go Xavier Taylor in this spot. If they're the players that's available, I think that's who they would go with. Demons for pick 10 and 11. I actually think here would be a point in time that a bid for Harry Dean would come as well. That could potentially happen earlier too, but I think Melbourne maybe have more of a need. If for whatever reason Carlton weren't to match, they would be one that would be very comfortable to walk away with him. So we'll go Harry Dean, which Carlton can match. Now the one thing this I don't think has formulated is sliding Carlton's pick back to pick 17 roughly. So the order maybe won't be quite right. I think Hawthorn should be above there and Carlton should be back a few more spots, but we get the gist of what's happening. So Carlton would match the bid for Harry Dean. Does it impact our pick again? No, we're still at 33. That's okay, though. That's still a good result. From here, I mean, the Ds, look, who would they go? I mean, you would think that Sam Grill would come into play here for them. And I know that there's a really solid chance that he goes a lot higher to us, but you would think that by this point that the Ds could be on the board for him. And do they consider a Lockie Doveston? Do they consider a Schubert to go up forward? I think for the purpose of this one, I don't think there's anyone else down here further. Because, I mean, the names aren't, I don't think, in any particular order. But I think I had them down on my other bit of paper for Schubert with that pick. Obviously, to go down as a tall forward to work with my check. Yeah, it could be someone else to come through the ranks. Van Rooyen, I guess the jury's still out a little bit on him. He's been playing a lot of VFL, even though I guess from an outsider's perspective, probably thought he was able to play a bit more AFL football. But there we are. So I've got him in there at 12. But just because it's a purpose exercise for a Richmond-based draft, that's how I can see one way of it playing out. And obviously, some of these players are interchangeable. The other way I can see it playing out is I can see a world in which Gold Coast and Essendon might do a trade early, whether it's at the start, whether it's in the lead up to the draft. I know there's a cutoff point, but I could see a trade happening where Gold Coast might want to get some more points on the board because they got Jai Murray later. They've got a couple of others who I think teams are going to come after. And Essendon might want to try and do a trade themselves depending on the draft order or the draft pick. So we'll have a look at that. So in this scenario, I can see Essendon trading pick 27 and 21 to the Gold Coast Suns for pick 15. I haven't used any of the futures. I've left all the futures where they are. Maybe there's some other shuffling of future picks to sweeten the deal. I'm not really that much of a mind reader. I know we're already guessing as it is. I don't think I'm going to be good enough to guess even further than that with futures to sweeten a deal. But the nuts and bolts of the deal, I think, would surround 21 and 27 for pick 15 because it helps Gold Coast with points and it helps Essendon with a pick to do a potential trade, which we will have a look at now. So with that done, you can see that it's given Essendon the pick 15 and then the Gold Coast Suns have slot in at 21 and 27. So they're now got a really strong raft of picks in that middle range. Which might actually help us again by picks coming forward a bit more for the players that are bid on. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So again, we'll run it the same as what we did last time. William Dersma at number 1 to the West Coast Eagles. We'll do the Zeke Ulen bid at 2. And then now they've obviously got a shitload more points to work with here, which wasn't an issue anyway to begin with. So they've used that. So has the pick come in? Okay, so it's already gone from 38 to 34. So somewhere around that mark. So I guess this is where things may change a little bit. So in the first example, we had West Coast taking Cooper Duff Tytler, which, I mean, when you look at who they've delisted, it kind of does suggest they're going to. However, there are some West Coast supporters out there who subscribe more to the theory that Archer Reed's going to be the next number 1 ruck, and they've got Flynn as well. So maybe it's not necessarily a strong sign that they're going to take Duff Tytler. But I still always think as well that Dyson Sharp and William Dersma as a pairing to go with Harley Reid, that's the nucleus of your midfield. That, to me, that logically makes sense why you would do something like that. So I can definitely see a world where Dyson Sharp goes to West Coast at pick 3. And I think that's a good spot for Sharp in terms of in respect to his body of work that he's put in. Then we'd get to pick 4 and 5 is up to Richmond. I think, again, I would still go the same with a Dylan Patterson bid, which would be matched. Does that change anything here? So we're at 33 now, so it's kind of about the same mark. So now it would be 5 and 6. But the key to this now is that Duff Tytler's on the table. And whether it's bullshit or factual, we'll never know until draft night, but the consensus and the reporting has been that Essendon are really heavily into him. He obviously did some VFL work there as well and was really good. And that's all we can kind of go by. Richmond haven't really said much about Cooper Duff Tytler, so they haven't said much about anyone, to be honest, so we don't really know too much more in that space. But a lot of the linking has been Essendon to him. Now, if Blair Hartley and co can play a good enough poker game, this is where they can maybe try and swing a good deal with Essendon to guarantee they get Cooper Duff Tyler if we can scare them into the fact that we might take him. So the proposed trade that I was going to go with, and look, I'll do the trade first, and I'll explain why I didn't do it the other way. So the proposed trade, we've got Essendon there. We'll change that to Richmond. I think the trade could look like keeping it. I'll do the trade first. Pick 7 and pick 17, which was 15, but it slid, for pick 5. So we'll execute the trade. So now Essendon jump ahead. They jump up to pick number 5 next on the board. We slide back to 6 and 7, and then we also get pick 17. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people screaming, no, we don't come out too much ahead in that. It should be a future first. I don't necessarily disagree. Like, I would love a future first, especially Essendon's future first. I just think the reality is that I can't see a team trading a future first for a pick in this year. It just doesn't seem to make sense. And I think the only trades of picks we're going to see would likely be for picks within the same year. I don't even think 2027 is going to happen, or maybe it's round 2s in 2026. I don't know. I just don't see a world where we're going to get a first. But I still think in this scenario that it's a win-win for both clubs. And I'm okay with that. I know you want to fleece teams, but sometimes it's okay to get a win-win. Now, the proviso of doing this trade would be that Essendon are committing to and will take Cooper Duff Tyler. I guess there's always that speculation and concern. Will they bullshit us and take Sullivan Roby instead? Because there have been talks about them as well. I genuinely think that when it comes to the top 10 draft picks, that clubs do have, there's a lot of unwritten rules, there's a lot of handshake agreements and promises made that are held when it comes to top 10. After top 10, I think it's fair game. I think it's game on and you can sort of do what you want. So I would be comfortable to do that, and you would obviously back both clubs to execute that in the right manner. So that would allow Essendon to get Cooper Duff Tyler, who we've heard that they're after strongly. So that puts us back on the board at pick number 6. So then we can still jump in and take Sullivan Roby like we did in the first example. And then pick number 7, we could also take, I mean, now that Sharp's gone, it could bring Grill into play, could bring Cumming into play. It could bring, who was the other one? It could bring Xavier Taylor into play as well. I think personally, for just the way I think we should set up down the track, I think I'd go Sam Cumming, but I wouldn't be against either of those other two. So Essendon jump back on the board. I think if the draft panned out this way, that they would take Xavier Taylor in that spot. The Ds, again, I think I would still go with the same Harry Dean bid, which would be matched. Maybe even potentially a Dan Annable bid might come in around here as well. We'll drop that in there. What does that do to our other pick? So we're into 32 now, if those two bids were to play out as well as the other bids we've got earlier. So then the Ds on the open board, we're trying to get to pick 8. We'll go to pick 18 for this one. So on the open board, I still think that Sam Grill would go about here, and I think I had Aiden Schubert, so I haven't really changed on that stance. Carlton for the Blues, I've actually got them taking Lockie Doverson, which is really annoying because I actually wouldn't mind him myself at Richmond, but I think clubs want to take these small forwards higher, but they get a little bit scared because they're a small forward. But I reckon the Blues might jump on him in that spot. 14 for the Hawks. I think I had down for them that they could take someone like a Mitch Marsh potentially, which could be a good replacement for Jack Gunston. Mitch Marsh can also play up on the wing, and one of the better kicks in the draft as well. So I can see Hawks taking someone like a Mitch Marsh. The Giants in at pick 15. I had taking Jacob Farrow. And I know West Coast might be a little bit dirty on that, but Farrow's one, he could quite easily go a little bit higher as well. But it's about his range, but I can see teams a little bit higher having a cheeky look as well. West Coast with pick 16. They're a really difficult one to place, to be honest. Difficult one to place because I think they would have liked Farrow, but I think Ollie Greaves, to me, if you're talking about the midfield, if we look at this example, they've got Dersma, Sharp, Reed, Greaves. I think that rounds out the midfield pretty well. It could just round out the midfield nicely. And the other reason why I think it might be something they consider is because of the Victorian factor with Greaves and William Dersma. It might just help with the less go home factor, possibly. I'm not sure if they've got an academy play here they would bid on, so that would be the other consideration, but I probably don't know enough about their needs to see if that was going to be the case or not. The Western Bulldogs in at 17. The Western Bulldogs, I could potentially see taking a Josh Lindsay type. One of the better kicks in the draft, like we've spoken about before, can play off half back. And I think he would work better in a more fully developed side as well. I think that would actually help his game a little bit more. So then that would come to us at pick 18. And this is where I think we can be a little bit, I don't want to say risky or dangerous, because that's probably not the right word, but I think we can look at someone, and personally, if it was me doing this, I would then look at someone like a Harley Barker. That's who I would lock in at pick 18, who can play a specialist wing role. We won't see him for the first, half, 3/4 of the year because of the ACL reconstruction recovery. Very, very similar to Taj Houghton, but we're not in a rush either. We don't need him to come in and impact in 2026. We need him to impact from 2027 and beyond. So that's why I think doing that trade with Essendon could be a really nice way to try and land a Harley Barker, as well as still getting Sullivan Roby incoming. What it would probably mean, though, is it would probably mean that this pick here would almost by default have to be Louis Kellaway. Yeah, I feel like this pick here would have to be Louis Kellaway, and I say that because of the list spots that we've got available. We've got, I think, 2 to 4 primary spots, and I don't think that Louis Kellaway would last through to the rookie selections. If we were able to guarantee that, then you could take a different player here, and then get Kellaway as a rookie, but I just don't see him getting through all the way to the rookie selections. But there you go. That's why I think there could be a potential benefit in doing that trade with Essendon if they were to do that initial trade with Gold Coast. I think there's a bit of a win-win there to be had. But yeah, keen to hear what you all think in the comments below. Does that work out for you? Would you rather try and get that extra pick 18 in as part of a trade with the Bombers? Would you be wanting more from them? I guess is probably the $1 million question. The answer is probably yes. I just don't know how it fits in and how it would work. Like I said, I know you'll want that future first. I can't see it happening though. I think they might have learnt from North Melbourne from last year, unfortunately. But if there's a way to get a win-win, I think we need to explore it. But yeah, keen to hear what you all think in the comments below about those two scenarios. Let us know what you think about the simulator as well. It's pretty cool. And we'll try and run this on one of the lives coming up as well. So make sure you like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you for the next one. Go Tigers.